Good afternoon. My name is Jim Lehan, and I'd like to welcome everyone to the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust meeting. Let me ask everyone to introduce themselves around the table. Scott, if I may start with you.
Scott Cousineau.
Tom Cleverton.
Sandy Smith.
Bill Conklin.
Jim Lehan again.
Laura Kreitzer, I'm with J.M. Goldson.
Jennifer Goldson with J.M. Goldson.
Susan Jacobson.
The meeting purpose today, and thank you both for being with us, is to discuss the development of a new affordable housing trust. Let's try this again. To discuss the development of an affordable housing trust plan that we hope to get not only approved but certified by the state. And the Golson Group has been contracted by the Municipal Housing Trust to be our consultants to make that happen. So I will turn the agenda over to you folks.
Great. Well, we're happy to be here. And so we're going to share this. So just chime in. Yep.
Here, I'll share.
Oh, all right. That's okay.
We'll share, Bill.
So we're very happy to start this project with you all and that you selected our firm. I have did you get a copy of the discussion topics here?
Yes.
Okay. So what I'd like to do, if you'll humor me, and I'd love to extend this to the audience as well, I have a little exercise for us to, it's really 3 questions that I'd love for you to answer individually as my way of getting to know you a little bit and getting to know the town a little bit. I like to start my kickoff meetings with getting to know a little bit more than just your names and really get a sense for what's going on in the town. And so these are the 3 questions that I'd love to ask you. Tell us a little bit about your personal interest in housing and what drew you to be on this housing trust, other than you may have been asked to serve. Describe any recent housing initiatives that you feel were successful in this community. It could be your own trust initiatives. And then what do you think will be the community's greatest challenges to further affordable housing goals over the next 5 years, which this plan is a 5-year plan. So again, it's tell me a little bit why you're serving here and what your interest in housing is. What do you think has been successful in the past in Norfolk in terms of any recent housing initiatives? And then what do you think will be the greatest challenges over the next 5 years to meet your affordable housing goals? So should I start with the chair?
Does the chair get an option?
Sure, you're the chair.
Well, I've been a member of this trust since it was initiated, which I believe is now 6, 7 years, somewhere. Time flies by. I think my interest I'm going to guess, is pretty consistent with everybody on this board. We, I think, all strongly believe in trying to provide housing for everyday folks that potentially find it very difficult to move into a town like Norfolk. I don't view it so much as a state mandate as much as I view it as just the right thing to do. And the trust has worked very hard. In terms of success, we've, I think, 20, Sue, somewhere in the neighborhood
I think 19.
19 or 20 homes that we've been able to put on the market to get, and folks that go into these homes are town employees. I know there's a DPW worker, they're teachers, they're firefighters. I think a firefighter is another one. They're just normal, everyday folks that you know, for whatever reasons find it difficult to find housing in a community like Norfolk and other surrounding communities. So I think the mission is the right mission. The difficulty is that we, because of the state mandate of 10%, 20 homes makes a dent in our community. It doesn't really create a lot of opportunity for us to get towards that 10%. And so that's my reason for, I think, my interest in it. I guess I would call it almost a moral obligation, I think, that we have to try and create those opportunities for people. In terms of success, I would say that the 819 homes that have, I think, been quite successful, that's all been in the last 5 years, really, that we've been able to do that. And we're very grateful for our Community Preservation Council for supplying a lot of the funding for that. So it's been a good marriage. I think our challenges are really wrapped around the state mandate of the 10%. We now have 7 40B projects either completed in the process of approval or pending. And most of those projects have really fallen our way within the last 2 to 3 years, and really within the last 2 years. And that's concerning to, I think, the whole community, because it's something that we're trying very hard to manage. Yet we recognize that the agenda is right, but personally, I think that there are a lot of things associated with the law that are flawed, that force these projects into a community that may not be done in a way that it is compatible with the community. It's not so much the issue of affordable housing, it is making it compatible with the community. And I think we're faced with, 5 projects now that are either in the process of being approved or pending approval, that have all kind of happened at once. And I think it's a concern to the community at large. We've had a lot of people have an increased interest in this. I think there is not a full understanding of what we can and we can't do. We're trying to figure out how to manage our way through this, because we don't want to block the concept, but we'd like to manage the concept so that it becomes consistent. I would add one more thing. The same thing's going on to Rentham and Plainville, which are the 2 towns that are part of our regional school system. So while schools, as my understanding, cannot be a reason to reject or not approve a project, which seems a little absurd to me, by the way, but you can't use that as a reason. Yet in truth, these large projects, like particularly in Rentham and Plainville, which are 200+ units, and you have one school system that all 3 towns are going to feed into, and all 3 towns are experiencing this type of growth at the same time, this is a very significant concern. And and we don't get a lot of say in it. We have no say, obviously, in Rentham or Plainville. Fortunately, our projects are on the smaller side. They're 40, 50, 60, 70 unit range, whereas Rentham and Plainville, and the one in Franklin, I believe, is over 600 units, right on the Bellingham line. I mean, these are just going to create massive issues for our school systems. And that's a huge concern for me. And I don't know how to deal with it. I don't know what to do about it.
Okay. Thank
Pass it
you.
on.
Thank you for your openness. I appreciate that. And remind me again of your name as you go through.
Jim Lehan.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Okay.
That was G. Lehan. Okay, I'm
You were
Bill
gonna-
Conklin,
You wouldn't dare.
Bill, yeah.
and I came on about 4 years ago. I'm the Norfolk Veteran Service Officer, and I was asked to join in order to represent any veteran interests that might come before the group from time to time, and I'm anxious to do that. A couple of other reasons I am on the board and enjoy it is that I think we're doing, our process helps preserve the nature of Norfolk, which is largely a single-family dwelling, and we've been able to, at this point, get 20 of those units, and I'd love to see us do more, and we are obviously trying to do that. My very special interest is when we can tear down a distressed property, a building that would be condemned or might be sitting on a prime location in this town for years before anybody took the initiative to tear it down and do something with it. When we have the opportunity to purchase that at a price that falls within our criteria, and we can take a distressed property down and build new construction, single-family home residence, and put a deserving family in there and have a real showcase building for the town and for the efforts of our board.
Is
I
there a
find-
property that you're discussing at this point, or that you've done that?
We've done
You
that,
have.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And was it a distressed single-family house, or was it a different use?
No, it was a distressed single-family.
Okay.
It was just too old and in a state of disrepair where it just couldn't be rehabilitated.
Okay. Thank you. Sandy?
And I'm Sandy Smith, and I've been on the board for 4 or 5 years now, and I'm very proud to be on the board. We've done a lot of good things for people. I think just going around looking at some of the homes we've provided for people is, they look wonderful. It's great for our town, and I've just enjoyed it, and it's been very interesting to be on the board.
And what do you think will be the greatest challenges regarding affordable housing in the next 5 years? I didn't press you on this one, but you can jump back to it if you want to answer that too, Bill.
Finances, I think, will be something that's going to be difficult.
Could you just elaborate in terms of keeping your programs going, or what were you thinking?
Yes, keeping the programs going, absolutely, yeah. I think that's going to...
We have to find properties that we can purchase within our formula, in the town of Norfolk being a relatively affluent community.
Well, the property keeps going up in price.
Price of properties,
And
regardless of their condition,
Yeah, correct.
can sometimes make it difficult for us to march on.
Okay, thank you. Tom, right?
Yes, Tom Cleverton. I've been on the board, I think, for a little bit over 5 years. I look at what we're doing here as something, it's twofold to me. One, it's a state mandate. The second piece of it is what Jim said, how do we handle that state mandate in the right fashion for the community? And that's why I sit on the board, because I'm a concerned citizen, I'm a taxpayer. We use taxpayer money to buy homes and to then resell them to people who qualify for the affordable housing. I think that's extremely important. It's kind of a fiduciary thing where we need to look at how this money is channeled, how this money is spent. I look at the future of affordable housing in this town reaching the 10% level, which is what the state has mandated, that even though the 40B developments that are coming through right now, some people may not be happy about that. It will also help us to get our inventory up to where we have we meet the state requirement, if you will, so that we can continue to maintain the planning that this town has done well. Ray Goff has been very involved in that, so that we can continue to keep that plan on schedule.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm Scott Cousineau, and I'm the newbie here. I've been on the board for less than a year, and I'm on because I was asked, but also I echo some of what Jim said, but the other side of it, the moral obligation as a pastor serving a local church. I've had people in my office talking about living from paycheck to paycheck. And I've had people in my office that are living in transient hotels and motels. And I've had people in my office that live in their vehicles and are raising families in vehicles. And so being able to provide families and individuals with adequate housing is a moral obligation. It's important that we do that. And I also, when asked to serve, I said yes because I was on the other side of it. When I moved to Norfolk, I moved from Worcester. And I owned a home in Worcester, but trying to get into the Norfolk housing market, selling a house, a little cape in Worcester, honestly, if not for the ability to live in the parsonage, I probably wouldn't be able to live in Norfolk. I'd be driving back and forth to Worcester still. So there is that piece of it, but most of it is that moral obligation of providing adequate homes for individuals and for families. Because I'm new, I can't really speak to the successes, but I know of what the trust has done over the last few years. And what I wonder about as far as challenges to achieving the goal is, as has been acknowledged, there's been a lot of community interest in the influx of these 40B developments over the last few months, and I worry about community resentment. Again, I don't think people are necessarily against the idea of having affordable housing stock in the town of Norfolk, but I think that they resent having it rammed down their throat in a way that they can't control or have a say in. And so I would I would hope that people wouldn't resent the people that end up moving into those properties. And the other thing I worry about is that the thing that makes Norfolk desirable, quiet neighborhoods and a close-knit community, that is also going to be challenged by the number of properties that are being, built in the community. So that which makes us desirable is attracting builders here and may ultimately take away from that which makes us desirable. But I think that is what may create some sense of community resentment from people that are living here in town.
Thank you. And I don't know if Ray, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Being the town planner, I've been here for 3 years now, in April. Watched some of the goings-on in town, tried to observe first and then comment later. But what I've learned is the work of the Affordable Housing Board has been really unprecedented, I think, in a lot of communities in Massachusetts. They've done some really good work here, creating affordable housing opportunities for the town. That's one aspect of what needs to be done here in Norfolk. The 40Bs is certainly something else that's happened to us in the time that I've been here. When I first started, somebody had asked me the question, what do you think is going to happen in Norfolk? What do you think the challenges is going to be? And I said, it's going to be housing. Housing is going to pop at some point. The housing market was still trying to climb out, 3 years ago, was still trying to climb out of a low. And I think now we're seeing the ramifications of the housing market come out of that lull. So now we're getting hit with these 40Bs. I think folks in town didn't really think about 40Bs until the past few months, maybe the last 6 months. And I think that's really been an eye-opener for folks in town here. And it's been an eye-opener for me, too, in a lot of ways, because 40B has a lot of different issues that go on with them. And we've had one 40B in Norfolk that was approved. And so we're still learning as we go along. We're making some mistakes, and we're getting better at it. But what we have accomplished at this point, I think, is to try to guide these 40Bs into a direction that makes sense for the town. Try to work with developers who want to work with the town. And we've had a couple of instances of that, and I think it's been relatively successful. We'd like to continue doing that kind of stuff. We've had conversations about doing 40Rs and all the other alphabet soup that comes with the 40s, and we've certainly not thrown any of those ideas out the window, but we've also been cautious about what we do say and how we move forward, because we do want to preserve what Norfolk means to the folks that live here. We want to preserve what's already taken place in the past. I like the idea, and just in that same vein, I like the idea that the Housing Trust has done scattered sites, so they mix right into the community. You really don't know where an affordable house is unless you're on the Affordable Trust, Housing Trust, and I think that's the right way to do it, so that just as any other community, it's a weave, it's a blend. And that's something that I think is a challenge, but it's also an opportunity for us. So I also think with the 40Bs, there's some opportunity there in looking at where we can have projects happen in town. And maybe as part of this plan, we start to look at some areas of town that make sense for 40Bs and try to guide them into the right locations rather than have them just pop up everywhere. And I think a nice dialogue with the town, with the Housing Trust, could really bring us to a place where I think we may have some agreement.
Thank you. Yeah, great, thanks.
So I'm the town administrator, Jack Hathaway. I was on the Affordable Housing Trust in the beginning when it started, and then got off, I think, when they let Tom in.
Heard that.
No, when some more people get interested and very talented people who you see with us today. I think one of the best success you've had a bunch of successes. One of my favorites was the Gump's Farm Pulte property. So we have an inclusionary bylaw so any subdivision over 10 houses, 10% of the houses have to be affordable. But we also have the ability for them to locate the houses out of the subdivision. And so we, meaning the planning board and I think the housing trust, there were some negotiations that went on. And what we ended up with was Pulte built four?
One off.
4 houses on town land at their cost, our land, but their cost. And then the housing trust sold off the property, and the housing trust kept the proceeds. So it was kind of a win-win-win.
Is Gums Farm the name of the town property or the
Yes.
name of the, okay.
Yeah, it was, yes, it was Gump's Farm. So we subdivided the land and created 4 individual housing lots.
We actually got that 5th one off-site, too.
Oh, you're right, there was
A fifth unit
Yes,
in
but
another
not on the
location?
same site, in another
not on the Gump's
location.
property, but another town-owned property. But like I said, there are other successes as well, but that was my favorite, because I think it generated a lot of money for the trust to be able to continue the process down the road. I think the biggest challenge will kind of similar to what a few people have said, but I guess if I look at it at the balancing act of trying to find good housing options for affordable housing options for people that is acceptable to the town, and hopefully trying to be able to do it at a pace that is that helps us reach our 10% goal, but is also palatable so that we don't have any growth that we can't handle. So it's a challenge. And, hopefully we can learn some new techniques for creating housing.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Sue, did you want to offer your thoughts?
I really would say that I think the group has expressed most of my sentiments, so, I just look forward to being able to add to the affordable housing stock and as Jack said, to find some different and creative ways to maybe take on that challenge. But I think everybody's really touched on why we're here as a group.
Great. Well, thank you for doing that. It's really helpful for me to hear your perspectives. And you'll be getting to know us more as well through the process. But what I'd like to do now is review, Laura and I put together a draft project schedule. And before I hand this out, so I want to emphasize that this is a draft. We looked back at our contract and saw that we were supposed to finish by September 30th. And when I laid out the first schedule, that put the 2 community outreach forums in the summer. And we were feeling like, well, maybe we could do 1 in the summer, but having 2 in the summer, we're likely to get a lot of pushback. And this is not our decision, but I wanted to be very clear as to why this schedule that I'm going to hand out is different from what our contract says. When we were looking at if we can finish within the contract time, it meant that there'd need to be a public engagement forum in July and then one in August. And then, because there's a round that we need to go through with the draft plan with you, with the planning board, with the Board of Selectmen, before it can be approved and finalized. So I'll go through these details more, but just so you know, when I hand this out, this is saying that we're going to finish by the end of October. We moved it 1 month out so that we would have 1 public forum in July. Even though that's still this summer, we felt like July is a little bit more plausible, that people are still going to be around. And then 1 in September, when people are, mostly, for the most part, back in town, not on the Cape and whatnot. So that's what we've done here. But we wanted to be very clear with you that this would require us to finish a month later than our contract says. And so if that's a problem, then we can go back to having 2 over the summer, which was the original schedule I laid out. So let me just pass this out, and then we can talk about the details.
I'm just gonna pass
There
it out.
should be enough, yeah.
I can look on it.
Jennifer, was the contract at the end of September?
Yeah, it was September 30th was the end date.
Okay, thanks.
So if you, I'll wait till everybody, and there should be enough for for both of you as well. I think I have 8, so. Okay, great.
Because Tom and I won't
I'm
share.
also on the Board of Selectmen.
Oh, okay, great.
We only meet once in the month of August.
Oh, okay.
And
That's good to
so,
know, yeah,
From a practical point of view, that would be tough.
right.
For you to comply with that date.
Right,
Logically going through the process.
that's good to know too, right.
I think
I'm on the right track, okay. Okay, so, so you'll see just the way this schedule's organized. The top section is about meetings, and the bottom section is about deadlines and when we're giving things to you. And then the very bottom, I'll get into, that's some interviews we'd like to line up. The area about the meetings, and then you'll see it runs May through October, left to right. And so we're starting here in May. May 2nd is the kickoff meeting. As part of how we like to start projects, we like to have the client, and you can decide who that is, if it's Sue, if it's the town planner, if it's one or two of you, can talk about how big a car we need. We'd like to get a community tour, and we'd like to understand the community from your perspective. You know, we could drive around on our own and get a sense for the community, but we feel it's more valuable when our client shows us the community and shows us some of the housing maybe that's already been built, some of the sites that are under consideration. We'd love to see some of the scattered site, you know, you have to drive around to all 19 or 20, but we'd love to get a sense of what's been done, what you're thinking about in the future, what's pending, but also just a sense of the town. And we'd like to understand the different types of neighborhoods that you have here, and just get a, you know, it's a couple hours in the car driving us around. So what we'd like to, we just suggested a date. We're not wed to this date, but it's nice to do it early in the process. And this was a date and time that Laura and I could both make it. It's during the day on May 11th at 11 a.m. So why don't we just keep going through the schedule? But I want to just sort of lay out that that's the very next step that we'd like to do. If you want to go down to the bottom under deliverables now, between May and the middle of June, we're going to be preparing the draft needs assessment. And what that entails is a lot of data collection, looking at the census figures for the most part, looking at other things like the Warren Group and current sales prices, and we'll look at development constraints as well as implementation capacity, and we'll look at sort of the track record of what the trust has done and how much CPA funds you have. And it's really everything we can do almost without you, without the community. It's everything that we can get. There's a few things that we're going to be asking you for to help us with that, but I'll get to that in a minute. But most of it's stuff that we're going to be doing in our office on our own for the next 6 weeks. And we're going to create this document. It usually ends up being something like, I don't know, 50, 60 pages of a document that we give to you. And the self-imposed deadline that we're suggesting is June 16th to give you the first draft of that document. And there's some back and forth there because, you know, we may look at census numbers. You know, we need to account for the prison, and we need to make sure that we're, am I wrong that there's, okay, good. We need to look at some things that are very local to you, that sometimes the census numbers can't always tell us if we're looking at it in the right way. And sometimes when we're looking at these estimates, you know, if something looks a little funny to you, we might dig a little deeper and go back into estimates from prior years to sort of check. And I'll give you an example. Sometimes the median household income comes out a little screwy one year because it's based on an estimate. And if the town says that looks way off to us, then we dig deeper and we go back a number of years and try to test it and see, is this an off year or is there really a trend here? And so when we give you this document, what we're looking for is your local perspective on, do these numbers make sense? And the analysis and some of the conclusions that we're coming out with, does it feel right, given that you know the community a lot better than we do, and then we can through looking at all these numbers and figures and things like that. So that's the first thing that we'll give you. And then if you want to look at the meeting section again, in the orange, 2 orange bars that are for June, what we'd like to also set up as part of the needs assessment is a half day of interviews. And we like to do this after we've collected a lot of the data, but before you've seen it, so that we can start to hear some themes from people who are, you can look on the bottom now, board members, town officials, representative, we usually suggest housing authority representative, realtors, any local developers, there's special needs service providers, and you can think of other people, but what we'd like to do is have time to really talk with people about not so much what we're finding, but we're listening to people describe what they see Norfolk's housing needs and what they see has been changing in the community, what they see, if they know of personal, Scott was saying, he knows of folks specifically through his work that are in need of housing. We like to hear those types of stories from people who really live here. So the way we like to set this up is to try to be very efficient about it. We like to have a room probably in this building for half a day. We're suggesting 9 to 2. We could be, somewhat flexible, but we like to kind of concentrate it. And we're suggesting 4 slots of interviews that you would fill with up to 5 people in each slot. We find that when you get bigger than 5 people, it's hard to have a relaxed conversation. It could be a smaller number. You don't have to have 5 people in every slot, but we like to give you that option so that you can get as many people before us in those 4 hours as possible. So we can get into more of the specifics of that.
Trying to mix the group, or are you trying to have similar people?
So we leave that up to you, but what we find is that sometimes you'll know the characters better than we will. Sometimes you do want to be careful about if these 2 people are in the same room together and they won't be honest with us because they're sitting next to each other, then think about that. Sometimes we have realtors and developers sitting together, and sometimes we have town officials all together, but it doesn't have to be that way. It can also just be when people are available. But we really usually leave that up to the town because you know the cast of folks better than we do. Okay, so that would be, we're suggesting a date. We're not wed to that date. That's a date that Laura would be handling the interviews, and she's available at that time. But if that date is problematic for any reason, we can look at other dates. But I'd like to do it within that, just before we're giving you the housing needs assessment, so that when we give you the housing needs assessment, the themes that we're hearing from the interviews will already be accounted for in our analysis. So I'd like to do it, somewhere about the week before. And then what we'd like to do is after June 16th, so that's a Friday, you'll have this document to read. We wanted to give you a little time to get through it. And we were trying to stay, I think we hit your regular meeting. I believe your regular meetings are we did it, I'm sorry, now I'm remembering. My memory's not as good as it used to be. Your regular meeting would have fallen on July 4th, because you meet the first Tuesday of each month. Is that right? Okay. So we were thinking, well, it would be great if you could meet the last Thursday of June, the week before you normally do, because I didn't think you'd want to meet on July 4th anyway. And that would give you a decent amount of time to get through the document. So that's the first kind of scheduling question that involves a trust meeting. And I don't want to be presumptuous, thinking that I have the power to reschedule your meetings, but I wanted to throw that out as a suggestion.
You have the power to reschedule our meetings.
So I can keep going through this. So do you want me to keep going through this so we don't get too slogged down in the...
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And so then what I'm suggesting is that we do hold the first community workshop in July. And we picked a week rather than a day, not knowing what else was going on in your community that week and if you thought it was even a good week. But around that time, we feel like it would be a good time in the process to share. You'll have had a chance at that point to review the needs assessment, get us feedback, and we'll be taking that into account when we prepare a presentation for the first community workshop. And so the themes and the way we talk about housing needs in Norfolk will have been informed by your review of the draft document to that point. Now, we don't recommend that you share the draft document at that point. It usually needs more work. But what we'd like to do is have a community workshop that really talks in a very general way about needs, but I'm very careful not to weigh people down in too much data. I find that I lose people's interest anyway, and it doesn't really benefit the process for them to be too bogged down in the various numbers. But I cover needs in a more broad way, more thematic way. and what I really focus on more is setting goals and talking about the beginning of development criteria, what ends up becoming development criteria. And so it's a meeting really that is to learn about the project, learn about some of our key findings to date, but it's really more to hear from the community. And the way, we have a few ways we can set it up. We often do a combination style where we have an open house style in the beginning of a meeting where people can kind of look through boards about some key findings and maybe a little bit about what is a housing plan, and Laura and I would be standing sort of describing things to people one-on-one so they can have some conversations with us. And then we usually have them sit down and do a more formal presentation about what is this plan, what is our schedule. Somebody would introduce us from the town saying why they wanted to do this project in the beginning. And then we would probably use a technique where we have small groups, 5 to 6 people in a group, could be up to 8 people, where we give them an exercise to talk about housing needs and goals as they see it. And then we do short report outs at the end, and it ends up being about a 2.25 hour meeting, including that little informal open house that we do in the beginning. So that's how it's usually structured. Not wed to that specific structure, but that's often the way we'll structure an initial meeting. And then what we'd like to do is meet with you the following week to review what we learned. And we would have a summary from all the different table discussions compiled for you at that point and tell you some of our overall findings. And then what we'd like to do is not meet in August, but to really prepare materials for the next meeting in September. And from what we learned in the July meeting, we would be coming up and working with you and the town planner and Sue to come up with some specific strategy ideas. And this is where we really do some mapping, look at sites, look at specific zoning mechanisms, look at the program that you're already running, the scattered site program, look at, maybe other things that you may or may not want to throw out there to the community to see if they want you to focus on. And,
I apologize. I need to go
I'm
pick
sorry.
up the daycare.
And I didn't let Laura talk at all.
Oh, that's
so Laura
well.
had to leave early, which we knew from
We'll
the
hear from
beginning.
you later.
You'll hear from me later.
And I
Not
did all the
easy to
talking.
get rid of. Let me give you that.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Thank you all, and it's very nice to meet you all. See you soon.
Meet you, Laura.
Hi, Laura, nice to
Bye.
meet
Nice
you.
to meet you too.
Question.
Yeah.
If I may.
Sure.
This meeting in July.
Yeah.
Now, is this something that you want us open to the entire community? Because when you talk about smaller groups, what would you do if you had 250 people show up?
So we usually like to open it up to the full community.
I'm all for, I'm not
Yeah.
suggesting we not do that. I'm just trying to
Yep.
figure out how you're going to manage
Yep.
smaller 5 to 8 workshops in one day if you have 200 some odd people.
Right. And so what we have found is that kind of the most amount we usually see coming to these are about 100 people. And that was sort of an unusual circumstance. We think it was because it was in the middle of a winter in a resort community, and folks, really were looking to see their neighbors and things. It was in a community that was, less than 3,000 people. It was in Stockbridge. That was the biggest turnout we've ever had for one of these types of workshops.
You said 300?
No, it was only 100 people. The community's less than 3,000.
We could break your record because there's...
That's a good problem to have, yeah.
Well, it's because that there has been such a deluge, as Ray was talking about, there's been such a recent deluge of activity around 40Bs. There's a lot of conversation around it, and that's a healthy process.
Right.
So I could be dead wrong. I mean,
So-
Norfolk does have a tendency to have a lot of abandoned, homes during the summer.
Right.
But I think you could have a very large turnout.
So that would be a very exciting problem for us to have.
Good.
We would love
Okay.
to have a large crowd. And so what I would suggest in that case is that we set up an online RSVP process, which some communities we don't really need to do it because they think they're going to get 30 or 40 people. But if you think you might get a large crowd, what I'd like to do is set up an Eventbrite link for people to pre-register. It would still be an open public meeting. People could just walk in without registering. But we'd like to get that'll give us a little bit more of a sense of how many
Okay.
people are coming ahead of time. And if we think we're going to get that many people, I may fall back on a more open house style, where we do a presentation, maybe to open things up and set the stage, but then we have stations that are probably going to be staffed by Laura and I and you folks, and we can think of what the stations will cover, but they'll probably cover different aspects of housing needs, and we might be looking at even discussing different goals, and we can do some exercises with them at stations where they start to come up with some language for goals in more of an open house format, so that people are sort of stopping by stations for maybe 45 minutes or so,
Okay.
and they make the rounds in different stations, and we can think about how many stations to have, but I would want at least one of us at each station, so that they have someone
brings
to
into
talk
an issue
to.
of facility, but. how
Right.
mu- We don't
What type
have.
of place?
Yeah, I mean, this is the largest room in this
Do
building.
you use
right
the
here.
high school for?
Well, we have an elementary school, and we have
elementary
the
school?
junior high, which we can use.
Sometimes cafeterias or
Libraries are
open
usually good.
Library, yep.
Yeah, the Freeman County cafeteria might be a good spot
Yeah.
for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Especially if we're looking at having
I
that
mean,
many people.
we'd prefer to keep it in town, as opposed to going to the high school, which is
Right,
in
that's true,
Rentham.
the high school's not in town,
Yeah.
that's right.
But the junior high,
Junior high
Junior
is,
high,
yeah,
yeah.
and the library's good at the junior high as well. Yeah, but the Freeman would
The
work.
community workshop,
yeah.
Jen, if I can ask.
Yep.
Is that something that you typically hold in the evening so that
Yes.
that our residents are able to, those of our residents that are working, are
Yes.
able to attend?
So we hold them in the evenings, I've also held them on Saturdays.
Okay.
If the community wants to. It's not my family's first choice, but they're willing to let me go for a Saturday if
Probably
that's
not anyone's
better.
family's first choice either, so.
You have to sign out and sign in?
I have to say, exactly. But we're willing to work with you on the best
Okay.
time, yeah.
All right, so we'll figure that out.
Your family usually likes it when you have Saturday.
Case well taken.
All right, and so then I think we're off schedule again for your trust meeting, because we didn't want to give too much space between the workshop and when we meet with you, but we could probably push it into the first Tuesday in August if you prefer to keep it on your regular day.
Does anybody have a problem with being flexible on our dates to work around
I've
this?
got conflicts already,
Oh, you do? Okay.
yeah, but not all of them. There's just,
Some conflicts, okay.
like that late June,
The June 27th is a
Yeah.
conflict? Okay.
May 11th is a conflict for me.
We'll do our best. I don't think we're wed to having to,
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I think we've only held our agendas,
your regular meeting?
yeah, we're not very good at
And so
maintaining the
we're
same
also
date.
flexible, and we'd like to make sure that we have as many of you as possible, because we really want to make sure the June 27th proposed meeting is really to look at that needs assessment. So I'd want to make sure that as many of you can be
Yeah.
here as
Yeah.
possible. It's important. Really, they're all important meetings. We don't have any fluffy meetings in our schedule,
didn't see
so,
fluctuation in gravity here. They all are pretty important, I think.
yeah.
Tom, is there any time around, you're gone, it's your South trip? Because that's close to 4th of July, is that?
No, yes,
Yeah.
yes. But I'm going, you don't need to know my details, but that whole week I'm basically gone.
Okay.
But I'm going to get some kids to bring them back here, so there might be 2 or 3 days in there. But the previous week would be better. Like the 22nd, or, for me, I'm just tossing out.
Yeah, the only thing that, the previous week would give you less time to look at the document, but it's
Yeah.
a.
Well, could we push it back after the 4th?
Well, is there anybody else that has a 27th of June problem? If not, I can try and work around that. Just depends on when I fly with the kids.
Nobody at this time has a June 27th problem, but,
I got that
you know what I
impression.
mean?
I do know what
Who
you mean.
knows?
We
Yeah.
could push it to after the 4th,
But
but only
the
if you're able
26th,
to
I could
start
have a
the
June
outreach
27th.
ahead of time for the community workshop. At the meeting on the 27th, I was going to get you geared up with a outreach plan.
Jennifer, keep the 27th. I'll work
Well,
around it.
might there be a day that week that you'll know, at some point, if we could work, if we could be
Yeah.
flexible enough during the week to.
And I have a suggestion, Tom, if you're not here, if you're not able to work
Yes.
on that, I can get the documents to you, maybe that
Yeah.
we're going to be discussing, and we could include you in the meeting FaceTime or on a conference call over a speaker.
Which is fine.
Just so that you're here and able, we're reviewing something, we're not voting on it, so
Yeah.
I think that if you can't make that
Right,
date work,
right.
we could certainly get you wired in to participate.
You around that way?
Keep the 27th. Okay,
Okay.
let's keep the 27th. Nobody else
We'll
has
figure
a
it out.
conflict, and
Okay.
I'll work that thing out.
And people, you can also send comments to me without sending it to everybody prior if you want.
Okay.
And then we can incorporate those comments into the discussion on the meeting. So, all right, good.
Yep.
So then, in August, we would really be getting you ready for the next workshop and coming up with strategy ideas that we want to propose. I shouldn't say propose, float, I guess is a better word to say, for what I'm proposing is the week of September 11th, which is the week after Labor Day. We can be a little flexible on that too, but I'm looking at the, just getting things ready and back to you all, to the Planning Board, Board of Selectmen. I want to give a little time for that.
You've got nothing planned right now in August, correct?
Not really, other than us coming up with, so what we'll
Yeah.
be doing is we'll be doing mapping of sites and working with maybe the town planner and Sue, and I don't know how you want us to work on the sites, but we want to make sure that we're mapping out sites for people to talk about
Okay.
at the community workshop, as well as coming up with a list of strategy ideas to float and get conversation. So it's more coming up with the ideas. It's not really no meetings planned for August. We may come in and meet with town planner, you or whatnot, but no official trust meetings or anything like that.
Good.
So, I noticed the agenda's a little different in September for your workshop.
Yes, so the agenda in the workshop is really focusing on strategies and development sites. And it's helpful but not mandatory that folks attend the first workshop because they'll understand the project already and have had a chance to weigh in on housing needs and goals. And then when they get to the second workshop, we're really not talking about housing needs and goals anymore, although I always skip, I kind of scan over what we talked about at the last one. But we really focus in on strategies, and what I mean by that are both local initiative strategies, things, for example, that the trust would undertake, as well as regulatory strategies, ways to look at your zoning bylaw, maybe improvements, I don't know, it sounds like you've got quite a bit in place already, but also looking at potential development sites. And we create a map that shows if there are, I don't even know yet, but if there are any town-owned sites that are still in play, surplus town-owned, or any tax title properties, we'd love to get a list of an updated list of tax title properties, we can map that out. And then there may be private, it could be some of the existing 40Bs you want on the map. And what we ask people is, choose one or more. We keep the bar very, very low. We say, discuss with either small group, or we can think about a way to do this in an open house style if we think there's going to be a large crowd. But usually what we do is small groups, and we give each group a map. And we say, look at these sites we've mapped. You don't need to be bound by these sites, but these are sites that we've mapped either because the town already owns them, either through tax title or town surplus property, maybe town hall, I don't know what's going on with the old town hall, or private sites that are being talked about as 40Bs, or maybe even they're pending 40Bs. We often put those on the map, because you never know, could be fall through, and maybe folks thinks it's a good site, but maybe not just that particular development proposal is what they don't like. So we ask them to choose one or more sites, and we choose these words very carefully, that merit further consideration. So we're not saying they have to say, we want housing here. We just are asking them, is there anything on this map, whether it's something we've identified or not, that merits further consideration for either affordable or mixed income housing? And then we ask them to envision, well, if you do like any of these sites, what kind of housing would be appropriate in your mind for this? Are we talking single family? Are we talking tiny houses? Are we talking small multifamily? What are you envisioning on this site? And so that's one of the exercises that we do in the second workshop.
Both of these workshops will be advertised.
Yes. They'll both be open public meetings that would be, I would suggest, usually my client group hosts them, and since the trust is my client group here, then I would suggest you host the meeting. And it would be an advertised, public meeting, but you would go above and beyond the normal advertising, and we can talk about outreach. It sounds like turnout may not be a problem for this community, but we can talk about how to get the word out as well.
Okay. And you're proposing to meet with the Board of Selectmen in October?
Yeah, so we've budgeted a meeting with you so after that second workshop, we would prepare the rest of the draft plan. You'd already seen sort of the data pieces and the informational pieces, but then we'll be putting together the goals and strategies pieces of the plan and an action plan as well. And you'll get a complete draft plan. We're proposing by the end of September, so just a few weeks after that workshop, for your internal review first. And then we would meet with you. We just said the 3rd because that happens to be your regular meeting, but it also worked. It doesn't give you a lot of time to review it, but because you've already seen a lot of the plan and you've already been to these workshops, so there really won't be a lot of surprises or any surprises really. So we were thinking, and I don't know if you'll agree, but we're trying to make that only a month late timeline that we started out. So we're giving you less time to review that. And suggesting a meeting of you on the 3rd of October so that you can review the full draft document, get us comments. We would revise it and then submit it. And now this is something I wanted to talk to you about. We have one more meeting left in our contract, and it would either be what we like to propose as a joint meeting, but oftentimes, okay, that's great, because sometimes towns tell me there's no way I can get these two boards together.
No. That's not a problem here.
Okay, that's great. And we would, we noticed in the calendar that the planning board meets on the 10th and the selectmen meet on the 17th, if that holds in October. And so we would propose.
Well, actually, we're
either
meeting on the 10th and the 24th in October.
first.
And the planning board
Oh, I
meets on
might
the
have gotten
7th.
that
Yeah, the
backwards.
planning board meets on the 17th. So we can
Invite the planning
hold,
board to the 10th or the 17th,
we can have a joint meeting
whenever.
one of those dates. I mean,
Okay.
whichever one most people can attend, we'll make it work.
With those two, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And then once the plan, so what sometimes happens, and I don't know, some communities are so anxious to get this plan approved that at the first meeting where we're presenting to the Planning Board or Board of Selectmen, they vote to approve that night. And that's perfectly fine. At other towns, they say,
Can we approve it today?
We're ready. Whatever you got, we're ready.
other towns, they say, we can't possibly approve it, we've only just seen it, and we need to have another meeting. So we didn't put a date that we're going to submit to the final, because we don't know when you're going to approve it, but we will commit to within 2 weeks of getting both the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board votes to approve the plan, that we can turn around a final draft.
Okay.
So that's the schedule.
All right.
So hopefully that seems, I like to really plan it all out. I find when I, if we don't do that, the timeline slips and it's impossible to meet the deadlines. So,
For what it's worth, I think the extra month makes sense.
Oh, me too.
Absolutely.
great.
I do too.
Anybody in disagreement?
Yep.
I didn't hear what you said, Jack.
I just think the extra month makes sense. You don't want to have two.
Sure, that's fine.
2 summer.
We're
You know,
in,
you
we're
want-
we're in agreement.
You
great.
typically, Jennifer, stick to your plan?
Yeah. Yes.
Plans are wonderful.
No.
Stick to it. Great.
Is that a reference to town government by any way?
Nothing to do with town government.
As long as you can stick to the meeting dates, then I can stick to the deadlines. Let me give you that
that's a-
caveat.
That's
That's an escape.
That's good.
That's a reasonable fallback. Yeah.
All right, so there were, so the only dates we need to choose, and we don't need to do it right this moment, but maybe, we can do it this moment if you want, but the 2 dates we need to choose are the date of the community workshop. I've just proposed a week, and the date of both community workshops, really. And so, you can also just get back to me if you prefer. We don't need to have this date in the calendar right now, but if you want to hold a date now, that's fine with me, too.
Well, let's see, rec holds their, we do some concerts during the summer on Thursdays. The 18th is the selectmen's meeting, Jack, in July. The 18th is the selectmen's meeting.
So you want to go with the 17th, Jim?
Monday night?
What's
You and me.
what's everyone's calendar look like? Monday, the 17th? Because, I mean, I know it's a ways off, but, I mean,
Sure, it's
it's
a good a fictitious date as any.
Because you should be there as well.
July.
No vacation
July,
that
yeah.
week.
Why don't we
It's a
go
Monday.
ahead and
It's a
set
Monday.
it the 17th? If it changes,
Okay.
that's one thing, but
Yeah.
it looks
Yeah,
good.
it's a
Monday, the 17th it is.
Yeah, and now, I just want to make sure the planning board doesn't meet, it's important to have the planning board members and the Board of Selectmen
They don't meet on Mondays.
involved in the process
They won't
through the
meet on
beginning.
Mondays,
Okay,
yeah.
terrific.
They don't meet on a Monday.
Oh.
Planning board. I mean, I don't think they've ever met on a Monday. It's one of those
That's
nights.
fine, I
where
just want to make sure it's, you know,
It's an evening
that's a
thing,
big
it sounds
conflict.
like.
It's usually Tuesday and Wednesdays.
Okay,
days.
good.
Those are our busiest days.
What time?
Time.
Yeah.
So-
I'm in California that week.
Oh.
I mean,
What do you
I
ask?
put this in ink, I already put it in ink.
Time for-
You just got outvoted by a vote of one.
I'm sure it'll be videotaped out.
I see one here, at 12 PM on.
Would you like me to dial you in like I'm going to do Tom?
No, you
Yeah,
can.
she doesn't have
All
a
right, so
time.
Monday, July 17th it is.
All right. great.
Jennifer, what time of day
So-
in the evening for the community workshops? Is that what you do?
Yeah, if it's a weekday, I would suggest an evening. And sometimes communities want me to start early at 5:30. I consider 5:30 early. I don't know when people get back. If there are a lot of communities in this town, I don't know when people are back in town. I often
6 o'clock
suggest that there's at least light refreshments. And this is another thing that factors in. If you think people are going to be going home to eat and then coming back, we want to make sure we can get a turnout.
7 o'clock.
I
So,
would say 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
7 to 9 or something, 7
That's
to 10?
fine.
7 to 9?
Yep.
7 to the end.
So I would just say 9:15.
Okay.
I know it seems weird, but
No.
I need at least 2 1/4.
There's a reason.
It's just a little bit more of a pace
Oh,
that's, doesn't feel rushed.
Okay,
Okay, that's great. So 7 to 9:15. And then the week that we're suggesting in September is the week of the 11th. Is a Monday still the best night? Monday, the 11th?
Again, we have our meeting on the 12th.
is there anything planned that you know of for 9/11 planning?
Oh, I wasn't even thinking 9/11.
That's Patriots Day. Patriots Day, 9/11?
No.
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 A Thursday might be better that week.
14th?
The
Yeah.
14th.
That works for me.
Does that work for everybody else?
Okay,
It's in
sure.
ink, it's in ink.
Same time frame, Jen? 7 PM to
That's
9:15?
fine. Yeah, that sounds good to
So
me.
it's
9:17 is a
9:14.
little longer meeting.
7 to 9:15. Yeah,
9:17 is a longer meeting.
yeah, 2 more minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, good. So we have all the dates set. So what I'll do is I'll just revise this and plug in the actual dates that we decided and the times so that we all remember.
Okay, great.
All right, good. And the third item on my talking list is to look at documents and information. There's some things that we've already pulled from online. I want to make sure we were getting the most recent documents. And so what we pulled is there's a draft open space plan that we found from January 2016. I wasn't sure if that had been finalized. There's a final version of that?
Get you the final version.
Okay.
Ray would be your best contact for that, for all of that
Okay, terrific.
information.
And a PDF, email, however you want to get it to me is fine. And then the last housing plan I found was 2006. Does that sound right?
Yep.
Yes,
And then we found a 2007 master plan?
correct.
Okay. And are there any other documents, planning documents, or anything else that you think we should be aware of? Okay.
Is there a community development plan?
That would be the master.
Is that the 2007?
Okay.
I call it master plan sometimes, but it may have been a technically, yeah. I had one community recently that calls it a general plan, which is, I had never heard of that in Massachusetts before. But anyway, yeah, they're called all different things. All right. Now, some of the other things on the list, I'll probably need to work with Sue
Yep,
and
I
Ray on,
can-
but
Yep.
building permit data, we have the census data about building permit, but we like to check it.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. And then some assessors data, really what we want to know is assessed value below 200,000 is the most,
Okay, we can
We can
get
show you
that.
both of those.
Yep.
And then if the schools, I know it's a regional school system.
Well, not at the elementary
Not at the
level.
elementary
Okay, so
level.
elementary is town, and then junior is,
Junior and senior regionalized.
okay, K through 6 is local. So
We
any...
can give you all of this.
You can,
Yep.
okay, perfect.
Yep.
We've got it all.
Okay, good. And the maps of the properties served by
Yep.
water and sewer.
Yep.
Okay, great. Can I get a shape file of that by any chance?
Maybe.
Okay.
We can probably give you access to our GIS system,
Oh, that would be great. Okay, good.
go down there and
Okay.
you can shape file.
Yeah, because I might lay that layer onto our, later. I mean, this isn't until, we'll be working on it in August, but I'll probably want to lay that onto our development constraints map that shows the potential sites. But for the first piece, the needs assessment, just looking at a hard copy or something on the computer's fine.
We've just
Great.
built a new school, elementary
Okay.
school. And both King Philip, the regional system, both the junior high, which had major renovations, and the senior high had a huge expansion, all within the last 12 years.
Oh, really? Okay. Okay, great.
So hopefully, we're done with new schools.
There's no sewer in town, other than
I read there's private wastewater treatment.
one.
Yeah,
Private.
There's two.
Private
Two.
wastewater.
two, okay. I read 3 for some reason. Town center area, an age-restricted housing development, and
Oh,
an
you're right.
industrial park?
No,
Industrial
no,
park
that's,
is just a septic system.
it's a septic.
Oh,
right.
okay.
It's a common septic.
Okay.
That's at the Housing Authority.
Oh,
The Housing Authority.
I think she's talking about Shire.
Oh, Shire Park?
Right.
Yeah, there's a Housing Authority, too.
Oh, the
has a common
Housing
sep-
Authority.
Has a common septic system. And Shire does. I think that's it.
Is Arnold Road, is that individual systems?
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
And then the last thing on our list is a list of if there are any town-owned surplus properties, and then also any tax, the most recent tax title.
Yep, I have all of that.
Okay, and if you could have the assessor's ID numbers on it, that's helpful
Okay.
when we're mapping.
Yeah, I will, print out the data cards for you, which will give you all of the information.
Great. Okay, great. And if you've done any vetting of the tax title properties already, that would be good to know.
Actually have done some of that, haven't
Great.
we, Jack?
Great. You guys are ahead of the game, so that's great. So the last things on my list are to set up the community tour and to figure out who's going with us on it.
Okay.
And so we had suggested is that next week?
Yep, that's next
May
week.
11th?
Thursday.
Hey, I won't be here, I can tell you that.
I'll be
So
around.
I'm available for that.
I'm available.
Okay, great.
Anybody else want to go?
Ray?
I'm
Jack?
available if you need me.
Okay.
If you want me,
Okay,
I think you folks have a lot more knowledge about the town than I do in some respects, so.
okay.
Tom, Scott?
I'll step back and-
I can go. I've lived here 36 years, so might
Thing or two.
see something new.
So why don't
He's never seen the other side of
I'll get
town.
a final number,
Okay.
and,
Paris doesn't get lost.
Might need a van, I don't know.
yeah,
Okay.
we may,
have
I can work that out with our facilities director.
Great.
And we'll work that out.
Perfect.
I'll kind of pull the group.
We'll get 2 or
and-
3 of us together to
Yes.
That's great.
take you around.
Right.
And if there's any chance, and I don't want to make more work for you, but if there's any chance to just map the parcels that you specifically want to show me, that's helpful when I'm driving
Well,
around.
let me ask you a question. What would you like to see?
Well, I'd really like to see a few of the scattered sites that you've done.
Okay,
But you don't want to just focus on our initiatives around affordable housing. You want to see the town in general?
Yeah, yeah. I want to, if you're showing a new person coming to town, I'd like to just get an overview of what types of neighborhoods are here. And then I'd like to see, for example, some of these are in play. You don't have to take me to all 7, but I'd like to
Well,
just
we can
get a
take you to
sense
the
of them.
locations, because only, they're not all, no,
Some
you
of
know,
them are,
Yeah,
they're not all breaking ground here, so.
And did you want to see the 40B, the affordable houses that we have as
a
well?
few of them, just as a,
Just an FYI for you, Jennifer, we actually have 124 in our units, if you will.
Yeah.
of which 19 are houses,
right.
so.
Our
there are
inventory.
Yeah, just a sampling of the scattered site houses. I
Yeah.
don't need to see
Which
them all.
would be a lot easier than going to
Yes.
124 different places.
Yes.
Yeah,
But I would
we'll
like
put
to
it
see
together
the
for you.
housing
Yeah.
authority, okay. I think you have a
We
good
got
idea
it.
of what I'm looking for. Great.
I know someone on the housing authority.
Nice meeting
Are you on the housing authority?
My wife.
Oh, your wife is.
Enjoy your
bye, Bill, thank you.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Bye, Bill, happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Notice how he's walking.
And then Laura will come too, so just.
Quickly.
Okay, so both
Well,
of
after he
you.
had his back operation.
Oh, yeah?
He is doing extremely well.
Oh, really? Back operation?
He was on
Takes
crutches the last time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's doing very well. He goes to spinning classes again.
And so the last thing I want to talk about is setting up the interviews. Again, we don't have to go with this date if there's a problem with it for some reason, or even the time. We could shift the time. But what we were suggesting is 9 to 2, and that gives Laura on June 7th. And that gives Laura what we like to do, and I know I'm very precise with this, so we've done it a lot, but what I find works best is if there are 4 45-minute interviews with technically 15-minute spaces in between. That gives us a little time to go over, and it gives Laura a little chance to run to the bathroom if she needs to, in between each
The
one.
only problem you're going to have with that is that it's a workday,
Right.
and a lot of our board members
Work.
work.
So if you think that it would be better to catch people either before or after work, the only thing I ask, and this is for our own selfish efficiency reasons, is to have those 4 hours, or it's really 5 because I'm giving Laura an hour break, just to have them together
Sure.
as part of the day. But we
Yeah.
can shift it earlier or later, as you think would be best for scheduling these.
Let us feel out board members and see how many can accommodate that time.
Okay.
From this whole list, Jim. Right? You want people from
These are
this
just
whole list.
suggestions, and these are what communities have done in the past, but you can think about this. and it-
Let us play with that.
Yeah, that's fine.
We'll stick with the date, and we'll just see if we can get enough
Okay.
people there. Okay.
So you could do something morning and evening, but you'd prefer not to do that.
Yeah,
Well, you'd like morning or evening is what I'm
yeah,
hearing.
we'd like to have it in one part of the day. So
Sure.
Laura comes and
So-
she's here for 5 hours.
So we could do 4 to 9, for
Right,
Yes.
exactly. Maybe we have some realtors
Yeah.
and the housing authority come in from 4 to,
Sure.
and, you know, the couple of town officials that are around from 4 to 6, and then, like Jim said, we bring in the
Yeah.
rest of the
That
board members in
would
the
probably
evening.
be, could you do that, a 4 to
Yes.
9? Let's do that, because we'll have a better chance of getting our larger representation.
That's fine.
Big 4.
You'll take 4, Jack? Okay. I'll put you in that slot.
Sorry, it's filled.
And then what we'd ask is just the day before, once all the interviews are scheduled, if you could give us a list of the names and what boards they're on or why you chose them, or a little bit of information would be helpful.
Okay.
And that's
You can
it.
do that, Susan?
Yes.
Planning board.
That restaurant developer from the center of town should go with Jim and Ray.
So that's everything on my agenda. I'm happy to talk with you, answer questions, go through anything else you'd like.
That's been pretty detailed. I think
Yeah.
you've got a good plan here. It's always nice to work off an agenda rather than, let alone your timeline. And I like that you stick to your timeline.
Great.
Yeah.
Good. Makes it easier for me, too, so.
Have you ever found, I've been reading a lot of these plans that towns have submitted, and I've noticed that I think it was the one in particular, the town of Weston, the way they framed their goals actually turned around and kind of caught them, and ended up allowing,
I don't know this.
and allowed something to happen that they didn't want to happen. And I'm wondering if you've experienced that.
I haven't firsthand.
I may not be explaining that well, but the
It's
way
interesting, though, the way
they
you say
laid
it,
out
yeah.
their goals and objectives, they were fighting a particular project. And the state ruled in favor of the developer and referenced their own plan as a support for their decision.
Right. I haven't seen the Weston plan, but what I can say is that my philosophy, I guess, is to make goals. I don't like to make goals that you could apply in such a way that I don't like them to be too broad, I suppose, is what I'm saying.
And I think that's what happened here.
Yeah. And so I like to really focus them in on what we're really trying to say. And I understand just from talking with you folks that community character and preserving a certain scale in this community and development pattern in the community is very important. So we want, some people I look at the words very carefully, and I'd like to ask that you do the same when we're drafting these goals. They may seem, sometimes goals can seem like, yeah, sure, we love that goal. But I'd like you to be more precise when you're looking at the actual words that we're using. And then with the strategies and the specific development sites, I think we want to be very strategic about the strategies and really, I like to pick a group of strategies that we feel can work together rather than a long laundry list of thinking of every single thing we could do, knowing that we have a 5-year plan. So I like to try to really narrow it and focus it. So I don't know about the Weston plan, but that's my approach.
Okay.
Jennifer, how many of these plans have you done, and who were the last few?
I've done quite a lot. I don't know the number offhand,
That's just,
but a ballpark, probably just under 10. I've also done a lot of work with housing trusts, doing action plans, which are
Sure.
different than housing production plans. But right now, I'm doing Westport, Agawam, Chelsea, Weymouth, and Sherburne. And
you're
you.
traveling quite a bit, aren't you?
Yeah. Yeah. And those are all but Chelsea is an official housing production plan. Chelsea has gone beyond 10%, so they're calling it a strategic housing plan, but it has all the same elements
Sure.
as a housing production plan.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yep.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, anybody?
Just one, I mean, as we're getting closer to 2020 here and the census changes again, will we try and do a projection of at least where we are, maybe not where we will be in 2020, but...
We could try to do a loose projection based on, the projections that I usually use are based on the UMass Donahue population projections, and then you can look at household size and make some, calculations around. We can look at the permits that you've issued. It's tricky, though, because we might not be right, so I wouldn't want to put it in too much of a finite. What you're probably really going to want to do is when you get the 2020 census, which is going to be, 2021 or 2022 or so, and that's just about when this plan's going to expire anyway, you're probably going to want to go back and just redo it. Yeah. Because it's only good for 5 years, so.
Okay. Anybody else? Ray?
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thanks, Jennifer.
We
Good
look
to see you
forward to-
again.
Good to see you, too.
Look forward to working
And I
with you.
said I needed to leave at 5:15, and it's
Look at
5:40.
that.
so
Oh, and we didn't know that.
Perfect.
She's great, thanks.
Are we going to leave at 5:15?
Maybe. Do we have any, I don't think we have any other business, do we?
No, just to let the trust know both properties have closed,
Terrific,
Great.
terrific.
so.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
And I second it.
Without further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. We'll be seeing you.